Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Game of Life. I know usually you're used to hearing a different voice start off the episode, but tonight I'm starting us off. So how you doing, Dad,
Doing,
Paul, fellow
doing,
podcaster?
doing good, Allie, daughter, person.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, no, I know we've been texting a lot lately because it's college softball tournament. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
we know people in the tournament, and we
Mhm.
just enjoy watching the games. It's like nonstop. I could turn it on some random game in the third inning, and all of a sudden I can't do anything.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, me too. I'm like done for 3 hours once I
Yep,
but
yep.
yeah, if you're not watching, definitely turn it on. This is a great few weeks for college softball. But tonight, really excited about our episode. So we are going to talk about all things Paul Richmond tonight, is what we're going to talk about. So buckle up for that one. But basically, for those of you who don't know, as my dad has mentioned every episode, he has never played the game of softball before. But he did play college golf, and played golf growing up and a few other sports. So tonight we're gonna do a deep dive into his journey, what that looked like and things like that. So with that, I'm gonna throw it over to him to start wherever he wants to.
All right. Well, until seventh grade, I was a normal kid.
What
Yeah,
normal?
yeah. I trust me. Seventh grade is when I was introduced to the game of golf. And anybody that knows me knows I have a pretty obsessive personality once I get going into something. So I went from
I
being
would say
introduced,
passionate.
okay, passionate. I I went from being introduced to the game of golf, randomly going with my grandmother once in a while, to playing every day, to in eighth grade thinking, wow, maybe I want to play this the rest of my life and play in college. So my parents would pretty much drop me off at the golf course at 8:30 in the morning in the summer, and my dad's way to work, and then I'd get picked up on my father's way home from work at 5 o'clock. Like I just lived there. Ninth grade comes around, I try out for the golf team, so I've only been playing since seventh. Uh, Golf at the high school I went to is still a pretty solid sport. You have it's pretty competitive. And I remember I didn't make the team. I was like just a couple off. But the way high school golf works is there's no JV team. Or there wasn't back then. There's
Mhm.
different variations now of how it's done. So if you're not in the top six, or you're not in the top 10 or 12 competing for the top six, it really didn't matter to the coach how many people they kept. So I'll never forget, I think from the prodding of some of the kids on the team that I played a lot with and got to know, I was up at the mall on Friday night because that's what we did in the 80s. And
Naturally.
yeah, I was in the arcade, probably playing Birdie King or some golf game. And the golf coach came up to the arcade and asked if I wanted to be on the team. So yeah, it's like they felt sorry for me and just kept me. But it's like in kickball or something where you're the ghosty runner or the does not count
That
person,
sounds like a Disney, like the beginning of a Disney
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah. I'm not making that up, Mr. Ed Merritt.
Yeah.
He's awesome. So played all year. I never made a tournament. The way golf works, you have six people that go to an event, and a coach can exempt people and say, no, you're my one and two guy, you go practice. Or he can have people qualify for the six spots or qualify for the last three spots or two spots. I was allowed to try to qualify. I just still wasn't anywhere near the top six. Back at the time, our top six, everybody broke 42 for 9 holes. So it's not like it's anything to be ashamed of. I just wasn't there yet. But again, God bless them. It was a great experience, and I got to know even more people and played all summer. And then as a 10th grader, I remember I tied for 6th in the qualifier to go to our first tournament, and I won in a playoff.
Mhm.
And I went from never playing to playing in every single varsity match in 10th grade, and then being one of the top 9 in our section and making the state tournament. So
Heck yeah.
just in 4 years. And that's why when I say you're passionate or obsessed about it, that was fun because in 10th grade, like those weren't my goals. And we talk about this a lot. My goal was just to get better every day because I love golf. All that other stuff just happened. Matter of fact, kind of backfired because in then 11th grade, I won our section tournament. I made states again. And then in 12th grade, when I was already recruited at the time to go to Coastal Carolina to play, I didn't even make the state tournament that year. I remember I took a 9 on a par 5, hit 2 out of bounds because I started worrying about the results. It had nothing to do with talent, right? You just don't
Mhm.
perform sometimes. So that was, I'm skipping around a little, but that was a little boost going from the 7th, 8th, and 9th grader that was just happy to play to the
Yeah.
10th and 11th grader that made the state team to not making it as a senior. And we can get into other aspects of the game, but just in those 5 years of life, I pretty much ran the whole spectrum of the ups and downs of working towards something.
Well, I feel like there's a few things that jump out at me, and the one you just touched on, I feel like golf more than anything, when you start focusing on a number or the result you want, it can go downhill or out of bounds very,
Yes, yes,
very
yes.
quickly. I mean, I'm no great golfer, but even like the other day, I was with my friends and I parred a hole, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could just get this on the next hole and then that one, right? Like, I'll get the score. And then I started playing like absolute crap. And I'm not a good golfer, so those two things could have been unrelated. But to me, that was just a small example of like, wow, I just got 4 holes ahead of myself. And now I'm doing not well at all. So,
It's it's hard. I was just talking, we had hitting practice yesterday, just some cage time. And we were talking to some of the players, and some of them have just started trying golf, and they're like, I don't get it. The ball doesn't move. Like I can hit a curveball. I can hit a changeup. I
yeah.
can't hit the ball that's just sitting there. And there's nothing, softball and golf can be, we'll do a little sidetrack here, can be relatable in a lot where if
Mhm.
you tweak your swing too much, you start thinking about the wrong things, right? If you get too technical, when it's time to hit the ball, it's just time to trust your process. Uh, you fail a lot. Golf's about minimizing your bad shots and being able to play them. It's not about perfection. You hit very few shots right off the barrel per se. And there's a lot of time in between shots. Golf, not only do you hit a bad shot, you have to actually walk to it and think about what you just did.
Sometimes the walk of shame going on.
Yeah, and but in softball you have a bat at bat, and you literally could be waiting 20 minutes till or longer till you get another shot at that, right? And
Mhm.
but at least you get to go move and play some defense or maybe contribute in other ways. But
Yeah.
when you start thinking about the end result too much, there's a fine line between not caring and just trusting the moment and not worrying about anything else. And I
Yeah.
definitely fell victim to that my senior year. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that was my grade 7 through 12,
But I think the other thing too that jumped out to me was in those seventh and eighth grade years when you were, begging your parents to just drop you off at the golf course. I feel like that's completely opposite of what happens for a lot of kids of like, no, you need to go practice today. You have to do this. We're going here. It's not a question. It's not your decision. Like, how important do you think that was for you to continue to love the sport that it was your choice? Like, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I had a few lessons. My father was very supportive, and mother, like he knew a lot of people as a salesman. And the biggest teacher I had growing up there was a professional golfer, Joey Sindelar, at the time. His father lived right on the golf course, and I would walk over there and get lots of instruction. And he would teach me something. It was almost like the Karate Kid. He'd teach me something that didn't make a lot of sense, and he was banking on the fact that I would go try to figure it out for 2 days before I come back and just work on it. And then it all came together. And I still randomly, probably 3 times a year, he's got to be close to 90 now. I'll go to his house and have coffee, and
Yeah.
we talk putting and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I just how did I learn how to hit a shot out of the bunker? Like I watched other people. He gave me a lesson, and then I went and hit hundreds, if not thousands, of shots out of the bunker, stepping on the ball, putting it on the lip, trying different ways, closing the club face, not to get too technical, but just repetition and repetition and repetition and figuring it out. And I think too many young athletes today don't ever get to try to do that because it's always, well, my hitting coach says this, my pitching coach, my golf coach, my instructor, my workout instructor, or
Yeah. Trainer. Yeah.
trainer. Like they can't go figure it out themselves, and there's no failure. And well, ultimately, there's a lot more failure, but I mean, there's no micro failures every day to try to figure out. And that's
Well,
what I did in seventh, eighth, and ninth grade.
when I think in athletics, like body awareness is a huge thing. Like, how do you feel? What did that feel like? What does it feel like when you're hitting it well? What does it feel like when you're not hitting it well? Like, there is something to be said about going in the cage or going to the course by yourself and just swinging for fun and swinging to kind of figure out what you're doing. And that's what's going to make you better. And I feel like that is just not happening because everything is so overanalyzed, it's analytical. And I understand that to an extent, right? Like as you get older and you progress through the game, but like the girls I give lessons to when they're 11, 12, to whatever, 16 years old, we'll be doing a drill and they'll kind of look at me for feedback and I'm like, what do you feel? And I turn it back on them to instead of I can tell you what you're doing, or someone could tell you what you were doing every single swing, but I don't feel like that's as helpful.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I helped out our high school golf team this fall, and the technology is so much different from when I played. But the kids laugh at me because they're like, "Oh, did you try the new TZ Flex, whatever hybrid driver?" I'm just making that up, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what driver do you have? I have a tailor-made something or other I bought at the golf course 2 years ago. It's new, but I don't get caught up in that because I get caught up in how it feels when I hit a shot. I don't get caught up in torque and degrees and loft. I mean, that stuff all matters.
Yeah.
But I feel like when I grew up, we just made whatever we have matter. And
Yeah.
and again, if I was to compete at that high level today, there'd have to be more of that that,
Yeah.
that, that plays into it. And same with softball or any other sport. But if you can't figure stuff out yourself, it you can't sustain any type of success or happiness just relying on other people. You just can't do it.
When
And
I
I was
think
blessed I got to do that growing up.
Yeah, well, and going back to how much you practice too, I think if it wasn't something that you decided for yourself, I think that's where the burnout factor probably would have came in a little bit in those early years before you even got to college. Because if someone was telling you, go practice, go do this, you have 4 lessons this week, you have a tournament next weekend, we're gonna drive 3 hours and see a private instructor, and we're gonna like, no, I just want to go to the golf course and swing myself. I think it's that passion versus burnout.
Yeah, 100%. And burnout to me happens when people don't feel the need to want to work at it anymore, and then they start thinking they're missing other opportunities. So
Mhm.
you get burnt out because you just rather do something else. And I just never had that, you
Yeah.
know. And some people, some kids do, some kids don't. Uh, but yeah, so
What?
and mired in that, when I became 17, I started working on the golf course maintenance staff. So basically in the summer, I would mow greens or change cups or work at the golf course from 6 in the morning till noon. Then I would stay the rest of the day. So I literally stayed there all day long.
Should have just lived there, slept there.
Well, my uncle at the time lived well, he's still my uncle, but
Yeah.
he he
Oh,
he, he lived 3 houses down, so I always had access to his house. I'd
that's
go eat
awesome.
their food at lunchtime and stuff like that.
Oh, best case. Um, so with that, I guess let's pivot to the recruiting process in college a little bit.
Yeah, in my day, well, we didn't have Twitter, and there weren't
What?
really
I
camps.
think
And
you mean X. X.
yeah, there were some like tours you could travel, probably the East Coast or the country a little bit for golf, but most people didn't do that. Basically, you went to the golf course and somebody you knew, in this case it was my father, took a lot of video of me and we put it on a cassette tape, and then we just sent it away to colleges. Like
Uh-huh.
that's how it happened. And
Yeah.
so that's how I got recruited. Like the what I went through with you and your sister for softball and what happens today blows my mind. And probably to get recruited in golf today, you'd have to be playing on travel tours. They're probably not called team. I mean, because it's
Mhm.
individual. You'd have to be traveling some sort of circuit where the coaches can see you, right? I mean, the only caveat maybe in golf is your score is your score. So people, you can say you hit home runs, you can say you bat 420, and people will worry about the pitching in the competition. If they know the yardage in the course I'm playing and what I'm shooting and it's documented, there's
Sure.
something to be said about that,
It's a
right?
really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I almost went to the University of Richmond just because it had the same name as me. Like that's how deep the process was.
Yeah.
I almost went to Miami of Ohio. Had an opportunity to go to Cornell, but I wanted to go south. All I wanted to do is go south because you can't play golf in the wintertime. And looking back, I didn't really have that. I didn't really have the best decision making processes on where I decided to go to college. But,
Mhm.
and we could get into that and what I even studied because all I wanted to do was play golf, like the exact opposite of what we talk about in sports now in college.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to do.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Well, I want to hear where'd you end up going, how'd it go? Obviously now
so
I know the answers to that.
yeah, went to Coastal Carolina. At the time, it was the University of South Carolina at Coastal. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't its own separate entity like it is today. And not to waste too much time, it was a terrible experience. I didn't know much about the coach. Uh, we did not get along. He was not consistent.
Mhm.
I don't want to be a hater. There were just some circumstances where the deck was pretty stacked against uh, the
Fair
people
enough.
he didn't want in the starting lineup. So I met some good people there, and I think out of the freshman class, all four of us transferred, and
Which
it is
says
what it is.
enough itself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and again, looking back, I always think should I have stayed? I don't know if it would have been any different. I mean, when we were down there, we had access to play every single golf course in Myrtle Beach. So if I was maybe stronger willed individual at that age of my life, I was really quiet and shy. Maybe I stay there and use that platform to continue to get better. Right.
Yeah, but
But when
like
you,
you say, we don't have a chance to think about what if that, what if this. So it was your journey for a reason, and
yeah,
what's meant to
yeah,
happen
yeah.
did. Yeah.
So I transferred to a school through some friends I knew. I transferred to the University of Charleston in West Virginia. It was an NAIA school at the time. Now it's a Division II school, but equivalent to that.
Mhm.
And went there my sophomore year, played all 3 years, made the all region team, two-time academic All-American. We played a lot of tournaments. Golf, you know how in the spring for softball, you'll go play tournaments and uh, I mean, or in the
Preseason.
fall,
Yeah.
or in the fall preseason, you could have a D2 or D3 school come play you, right?
Mhm.
They did that in the fall in golf a lot. So we played. I remember we played at JMU and we played at some other D1 schools, and it was a lot of fun. But ironically, I had another year because I ultimately redshirted my freshman year. And it's funny, I was so done with school and how hard it was. I look back now and like, why didn't I stay another year?
Yeah.
But I had my business degree. I did not know I wanted to be a teacher. I did not want to go get my MBA. And I just stopped and graduated and came home. Isn't that kind of crazy?
I'd
And
say
then
you turned out pretty good.
no, thank you. But I mean, the goal was I went down with some friends. We went down to Florida and tried to play in a few mini tours, and that that lasted maybe two tournaments because you're funding it yourself. You don't get paid much cash. The
Mhm.
goal was to try to find a sponsor and go to Q school. But I also realized at that point I just wasn't really that good either,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So there were no regrets in that matter, but it was the end of the road at that point. And we talked last week about identity. That was my identity. Like here I graduated college. I played golf my whole life, and now I'm 22 and a half, 23 years old, and I have no idea what I want to do because I didn't even do an internship in college. I just took my business courses, had great grades, and played golf. And now that
Mhm.
comes crashing down. And what's my identity?
Right. Well, I want to go back to a few things. So I know I've talked about this before with you, but how important do you feel like it was for you to go to Florida and try the mini tours so that you would have no regrets? Like so that you didn't come back thinking, what if this, what if that, if this fails, that's on, plan B. How important do you kind of feel like that was for you?
Well, it was very important because at the time I had dating your mother, and she
Mhm.
got a job as a school counselor. So she was pretty secure in her
Mhm.
career back in New York. And I wasn't too fond of going necessarily. And she's like, you got to go, because she had the foresight to see when we're 30, 40, 50 years old, you don't want to be the guy. Well, I could have went and done it, but I decided,
I
she
could have
held
gone
me back.
pro. Yeah.
Yeah, the old ball and chain, and so yeah, it was super important. And I don't I don't think I gave it the all like I should have, because you need to, you had to get a job during the day, and then you try to hit balls at night. You had to make some money to support your lifestyle. And there were
Mhm.
just too many other variables I didn't want to do. I wanted to come back home and get started with my future. But at the same time, it was nice I did go to see that I didn't want to be there, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's really important that you kind of found out what it was like. It's the analogy I think of is growing up, you think you want to have a job and be this or that, and then you go shadow someone, you're like, ooh, never mind. Like, it's important to
Yeah.
find out what you kind of don't like too.
And I have college teammates, some I'm real close to this day, that, I mean, probably half the team are now golf course professionals. Very good. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, great courses, or they're on their uh, state golf course pro commission or committee
Yeah.
or whatever. I knew I also did not want a job in the golf business because I still enjoyed the game. I didn't
Mhm.
want to be in a business where all of a sudden I'm around it but can't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I didn't pay too much attention to my classes. Now, again, in college, I had over a 3.6 GPA. So when I say I didn't care what I took, that's not the point. I just
Right.
didn't focus on minoring in marketing or doing an internship. I just majored in business administration. I don't know what I was going to administer when I never even did an internship. And
So what
once
happened when you
I
came
found,
home from Florida?
yeah, well, I mean,
Twiddled his thumbs. No, I'm
yeah,
kidding.
what do you get a job in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the easiest entry level job when you just have a generic business degree is a financial institution.
Mhm.
So I worked at a financial institution for a year, and then transferred over to a credit union. And when I worked there for a couple months, I ended up operating one of their small branches. And all my life I've been working towards stuff, right? You play in school, you make
Mhm.
the team, you make some tournaments, you make the state team, you go to college, uh, you are successful there, and then you go down to Florida. And I mean, I wasn't successful, but I ran the whole gamut. Now I'm just going to work every day, and then 2 weeks a year you get a vacation, and then 5 o'clock on Friday comes and you have 2 days for the weekend, and then Sunday I'm like, oh, I gotta go
Mhm.
back to work. And I knew something had to change. And
You're like a tumbleweed rolling
it,
through life.
some people might like that. I mean, I just need more. I can't just go to a job and say, whoo, all right, I worked some hours, I helped some people, and now I have my own free time. I need something that actually immerses me 24/7 into what I
Yeah.
believe in and what I do. And did some soul searching. And a funny story, I decided to go back to teach. And so I would work 9 to 5, and I already had my degree, but I needed certain teaching courses. So
Mhm.
took a bunch of night classes, 5 to 8 at night. And
Mhm.
ironically, your mother and I got married, and the joke was, like, 2 weeks later, or that fall, I quit my job because I had to go student teach. So,
Yeah.
like, boy, I'm the breadwinner in the family, right? That was a tough sacrifice
Picked
for
a good
20 years.
one. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but think about it. 28 years later, I feel like I haven't worked a day in my life, because that's how
Mhm.
long I've been an educator and coach for. And if I
Mhm.
didn't make that sacrifice or have the support of your mom, my wife, who knows? I mean, maybe it would have worked out in a different parallel, you
Its
know,
own twisted way. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but I haven't that sacrifice I made, I've been back to working towards stuff and coaching
Mhm.
teams and changing classes and having the position I have at New Visions now. And so many people settle. And I think all the things I did as a kid and a young adult with the game of golf, just like we said last week with identity,
Mhm.
it's not succeeding or failing in golf that made me who I am. It's how hard I work to try to succeed in that sport that made me who I am. And I put that much energy in everything I do now. I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. Growing up, we're doing so much travel softball. I mean, golf was like the 10th thing on my list when you guys were growing up. But I put the same amount of energy into everything else we did. And that's the whole
Mhm.
point, right?
Yeah.
So
Did you, question for you, did you always like have kind of teaching in the back of your mind, like, oh, what if I was a teacher? Like, I know I like to teach, what if this? Or was it just kind of something after you graduated, you're like, oh, that really interests me now? Like, did you just feel like it wasn't the right thing to do? Or
uh,
I don't know.
no, I didn't. I was going to be a pro golfer. I mean, a lot
Mhm.
of kids have those dreams. And then, oh, golf, I meet so many people and it's easy to talk to adults. I'll make connections and I'll just find a job when I'm done playing
Right.
golf. And ironically, look what I do now with my financial business and the business your mom and I are opening. So I do have a business oriented mind. But actually, when I was a freshman at Coastal Carolina, I met a professor there and I forget his name, but I'd go into his office. It was a history course. And we'd have these discussions. And I'm probably the only student that actually read the chapters in the book he was talking about. We'd talk about it. And he's like, you get this stuff and you're passionate about it. You should be a teacher. And I'm like, no, I'm into golf and business. And that that came to my mind when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, which did not entail working at a financial institution. I'm like, wow, maybe I should go back and teach. Just because I love reading, I love learning other people's stories, and I love sharing other people's stories. And
Mhm.
I think that's what makes a great teacher, not necessarily the content, right?
Yeah. Well, also for anyone who doesn't know out there, my dad taught history for many, many years, and you could tell he's passionate about it because his eyes would just light up. And when I'd ask him for help with my history homework, and I'd have to tell him to stop after I wrote the answer down, I'm like, I don't need the 10-year backstory. I just need to know the things.
It's true though. But
That's funny.
we forget buried in history are all the relationships built and destroyed with people conflicting and
Mm,
forming alliances and getting along. And we do the same thing. It's just not history because we're in the present right now, right?
yeah.
That's what drew me to it.
And I'm curious too, going back a little bit. So I know like everyone loves to say, right, oh, golf is so mental, right? Golf is so it's in your head. What does that mean to you? Because I feel like people like to throw that out there, but being someone who played it so competitively, like when you hear someone say that or you think about it, what does that actually mean? Like walk me
Golf,
through that.
golf being mental.
Yeah, or just like how you have to think when you're playing or not getting too ahead of yourself. Like what does that mean to be mentally strong when you are good at golf?
Yeah. When you're in the zone, I mean, you can be in the zone in golf just like with any sport. Your golf swing's pretty much centrifugal force and gravity, right?
Say that
It's
again.
centrifugal force and gravity. No, everything's connected. You're
Oh,
winding
yeah.
up, you're going through. And the more you think about where the ball's going to end up or where you have to hit the ball, and you get all these other thoughts in your head, your body can't swing 90 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour, or whatever it is, and have last minute thoughts, right?
Mhm.
Uh, I forget I forget the term, but if there's trees on the left, a lot of golfers will say, don't hit it left. All your mind hears is left,
It's like don't
left,
strike
left.
out. Don't strike
Yeah.
out.
All
Yeah.
you hear is strike
Mhm.
out, right? So you have to, I mean, visualizations as important as golf as anything else. Like you literally have to see the fairway being way wide and not even visualize the trees. And then you have to just swing and trust that all your practice is paid off. And the minute you
Mhm.
start doubting yourself, I mean, golf's mental, softball's mental, soccer's mental, any
Life's mental.
every yeah, life's mental. Everything's mental. Some people have the best ideas in the world, and if you don't take action and trust your decision making, you just you just get stuck where you are for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
it's the same in golf and every other sport. But I feel like you have good days. I mean, you never completely get that out of your head probably all the time, but I feel like it definitely prepared me for a lot of other things I do that
Yeah.
just go for it.
Well, when you're talking about being in the zone, I almost feel like that's a metaphor for life. Like, as human beings, we like to say, well, if I do this now, 3 years from now, I can do this. And on hole 12, I'll be here. And then instead of being where our feet are and actually focusing on the shot or that's in front of us or what we're actually doing, I feel like that's a really good message to take from that.
You know, funny story. People will start off in golf. You're 100% right. This is what my story has to do with what you
Mhm.
just said. People start off and par the first hole or birdie the first hole, and now they think their whole round's going to be great. And by hole 12, it's like the second worst round they've ever shot in their life
Yeah.
of the ups and downs. The first time I ever broke 70, okay, I think I was a junior in high school. The years I was in high school, but I
Yeah.
double bogeyed the first hole. So the first hole's a par four. I get a six. So I'm two over. I ended up shooting 68 that day. So that means I played the next 17 holes six under. But if you just if you get a bad start in life, if you just say you're going to quit and you can't get better, then you never have that opportunity, right? If you're
Mhm.
waiting for the perfect moment to continue your journey, well, what about when you face adversity on hole 7 or 8 or something like that? So I always find that story funny. That was probably the day I never thought I'd break 70. Because funnier, the first time I thought I was going to break 70, I was 3 under going into the 18th hole and hit a ball sideways out of bounds and made a seven.
Mhm.
So there, I double the first hole and shoot 4 under. I'm 3 under going into the last hole and triple the last hole. Like, just because you're set to succeed, you still have to be present and just focus literally one shot at a time. And in life, you focus one step at a time or one day at a time. Or,
Mhm.
you know, all those silly cliches are so true in golf more than anything. So
No, and I mean, I've played sports my whole life, and I feel like golf tests me more than anything. I mean, I find myself so mad at this little ball. I'm like, all right, it's a good reflecting point because I have to take a step back, and it teaches you, I think, a lot about how you speak to yourself. Um, when things are kind of going poorly, I mean, is that something you dealt with, like how you speak to yourself and the verbiage that you use in your head? Because, we like to talk about talking to yourself versus listening to yourself. I'm sure in golf, that's a huge thing.
yeah, I put so much pressure on myself in golf. Again, my worst year of high school golf was my senior year. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I was conference MVP, but I mean like in the postseason
Minor
stuff.
detail, minor
Yeah,
detail.
and my worst season in college was my senior year. To the fact I was so mental off the tee, I started using my driver without a tee.
Wow.
Because I won't. Then I had to use a 1 iron, and then I couldn't hit the ball off the tee because I was so worried about where it would go. And if you try too hard and you expect too much, it's so hard to be successful. You
I
have
mean,
to just enjoy it and trust it.
I resonate with that. My junior year, when we got our new hitting coach, I was swinging in front of her for the first time, and literally 45 seconds into hitting, she looked at me and she goes, "You need to try way less." I
It's
was like,
true.
you know what? That actually makes sense. And I needed to hear that. She's like, stop trying to be perfect, try less, just do. And I feel like for those of you who play sports competitively, you know exactly what we're talking about. Sometimes it's you just take a second and there's so much going on in your head. It's like I just need to try a little bit less and just trust my, body movement, trust my training, and I don't know, that memory came to mind and just made me laugh.
Yeah, I mean, I joke with my students a lot that they're like, "What would you want to be growing up?" I'm like, "A pro golfer," and you see how that turned out because I'm standing here with you right now. Uh, but looking back, I mean, I wouldn't have wanted my journey. I mean, I can't say to this day it wouldn't have been great to be a pro golfer, right? But I wouldn't have experienced everything else. I mean, the lessons I learned trying to get to that point which I failed miserably at, have helped me build a career, a family,
Yeah.
coaching career, a teaching career. And I feel like it was passed on to you and your sister
Mhm.
in different ways. And
100%.
the things you learn aren't for nothing if you don't reach your goal. It just means you're going to use those skill sets and find something that's worth doing continually over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So
What do you, if you had to pick, let's just say three, like top things that your athletic career taught you that you take into life, what would they be?
no guarantees is the first one.
Hmm.
You know, remember the year I thought I was going to go to nationals in college, our team didn't win our conference. You know how you get the automatic bid when you win your
Yeah.
conference. But in golf, the top 5 individuals got to go to the nationals as well. And I tied for 5th my junior year. And we went into a playoff. And it's a 90-yard bunker shot. I remember it, or a 90-yard fairway shot with a pin tucked. I still remember it to this day. I thought I hit the perfect sand wedge, and it 1 inch away from being perfect, but it plugged in the top of the bunker. And I'd take a penalty stroke and bring it back. And so I actually hit a great shot, because you're talking 1 inch, right? But
Hmm.
so I thought I executed it, and there's just no guarantees, right? You can tell I think about it because I just described the whole situation
Yeah.
like it
Same
was
thing
nothing.
in life. Yeah.
But there's no guarantees. But that kind of leads to the second thing. That's what makes it so much fun pursuing.
Hmm.
If you're winning all the time, you're not pursuing the right things. If
Hmm.
if you feel safe all the time, you're not pursuing the right things.
Hmm.
So the more you can pursue where there's no guarantee, to me, that's what makes number two so much worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And the third thing is that it's more fun along the journey than it is actually at the destination. Like,
Hmm.
I look back at all the journeys I had with golf, and I remember those stories in way much more detail than whether I succeeded or failed.
Yeah.
And you can't, you can sustain a journey, you can't sustain an end goal, because then what's next? And if you reach your goal, I'm not saying that's bad. I make it feel like it's a theme that, oh, I never reached my goal. I don't mean
Yeah.
that. But then you better have a new something to pursue,
Hmm.
something with no guarantees, something that's worth pursuing, and something where you enjoy the journey the whole time. And those three things are what keep me going with everything I try.
I love those three things, and I think they're huge. And I think specifically the third one of the journey or the process being more important than the destination. I think that's something everyone can take from this, because I think it's really easy to say after you're done with something, right? Like, oh, trust the process, like a lot of people say that after they succeed, but that's something you really have to try to incorporate, really try in your life to
Yeah.
incorporate when you're going through it. Life's the climb, as Hannah Montana says. But I think that's just super important because I mean, use the metaphor of like walking up a mountain for the view, right? You could walk the mountain for 4 hours and you look at the view for 30 seconds, but let's enjoy all of it, right? Let's
Yep.
enjoy getting there. So I think that's super important too. Hopefully that wasn't too cheesy with my metaphor, but
No, no. And speaking of the climb with Hannah Montana, at my age, it's called the descent.
oh, oh boy. Oh
So,
boy.
but again, more of the reason to
No, you're
appreciate it.
still climbing. You're still
Uh, so I use these things. This is the time of year, and I mean, in college softball, it was last weekend, right, where your
mm,
season's on the line, and most people are done playing now. Our high school playoffs start Wednesday, and I keep reminding the seniors. I think it's important to acknowledge with them that the end is near. It just is, right?
mhm,
So don't get all amped up and think this last game means more potentially. I mean, if we win, we move on. But the last game, don't get all amped up that this has to be the game you have your best performance ever. No, you've prepared for this and you're in a spot to succeed and do well, but really enjoy every minute. Maybe you enjoy your walk-up song more than ever. Or maybe
mhm.
you're listening to the dads in center field giving useless advice to you, and you just chuckle because you've realized after all these years it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but
Yeah.
you have to enjoy it all, and like you like to say, know where your feet is. Don't get so caught up that if you lose, oh, it's the end and I'm sad. No, the end's coming. So let's
Right.
just enjoy it for every minute. That's just the reality.
And I think that makes it easier a little bit to move on too, or kind of come to terms with the fact it's over, looking back saying, you know what, I gave it my all and I enjoyed every single freaking
Yep.
second that I was there and I was present and I made the most of it and I really was where my feet were and I gave it all I had. I think, when it's in your rearview mirror instead, it makes it a little bit more wholesome, I guess I would say, or you're okay
Yep.
with the fact, just because you knew that you were present in everything that you're doing and you were grateful for it while you had it.
You know, not to get too heavy or deep here, I think about death a lot, and it's not because I'm worried about it. It
Hmm.
makes me realize when I'm on the fence of should I go try something or should I go do something? Well,
Hmm.
why wouldn't I? Because I
Yeah.
only have so many days. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's really not a negative to me. It
Hmm.
helps me realize what's the worst that can happen. Like
Yeah.
I've survived every worst day of my life. Here I
Yeah.
am. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah. And so, I mean, it's funny with the story, we kind of stop after golf and my job and teaching. But I mean, that'll come out in the podcast quite a bit. Like I think even in our first episode, some of the crazy stuff when you grew up and when Jenna grew up and how
Yeah.
I transitioned into
I
coaching.
know
And
we acted like your life ended when you had kids.
yeah, no, but
No, I'm
you
kidding.
know, I mean, if my 18-year-old self would realize when you're 52 years old, you're going to be a high school softball coach, like no, like
I
I,
have two closing questions for you, if that's okay.
okay, yeah.
So the first one is cliche. Instead of asking what advice you'd give yourself, I think I'd say what perspective do you wish that you had when you were 18 or 19 years old?
Uh, how well I mean, from a golf perspective, I think it would have helped me succeed more that I already practiced hard enough.
Hmm.
Uh, I really needed to try a little less harder.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's where you get it from.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
everything
Thanks for
I
that. No.
that you can work hard in something and it doesn't have to be your identity. Like
Hmm.
I was I was I was confusing success in golf with success as a person. And looking back, I had all the tools to be a successful person, but I didn't realize it because all I was thinking about is golf. And
Yeah.
that was that was a tough transition when I was done playing. And
Hmm.
that's why I focus so hard about that with young athletes today, because it doesn't have to be that way.
When I feel like with me and Jenna and my sister, like that was always preached to us that you're so much more than that. So I always appreciated that.
Yeah, so you live and learn, right?
Yeah.
And you
Pass it
hope
on.
the people you're close to and love don't you're going to go through you went through failures and successes I could never dream of,
Hmm.
but you didn't have some of the failures I had because you try to help. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, we didn't try to protect you from failing. I just tried to help prepare you to transition to your life better, I guess. So
100%. Yeah. And then last question, favorite golf memory
uh
besides the
gosh,
putting green you built in our backyard?
the
We went through the whole episode and didn't even mention that.
the 18 tons of dirt and sand I brought in the yard to
And
build
when
a
I say
putting
putting
green.
green in my backyard, I'm not talking about like a little blob of turf. I'm talking like golf course grade putting green in my backyard. So just
You
wanted to.
know, of all my golf memories, the best ones that come to mind were when I worked maintenance on the golf course with non-golfers.
Really.
Just you talk about perspective, people that didn't even play the game, spending 6 hours a day mowing grass for people that played the stupid game. And the
A
question,
stupid
like,
game.
well, like one time a guy I was teaching a guy where to change the cups, to change the hole in the green. And he literally put it an inch from the side of the green. And I go, no, like he goes, why? You said put it on the green. I go, yep, you can't put it there. And he's like, why? And I had to try to explain and I couldn't you figure it out. And
Yeah.
uh time a guy fell asleep mowing greens and the mower went right through the fringe and then it starts vibrating and he went right into the pond. you know, the stories like
What?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one time the superintendent was away for a couple weeks, so there was a trail outside the course, and the mechanic took the governor off the golf cart so it would go real fast, and we just had time trials on our breaks. And I I love everything about being on a golf course, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be playing golf. And if I knew that back then, I probably would have even had a better career. But
Yeah.
those are my memories, almost the stories that didn't involve playing, but
But that,
involved.
you know what, that's almost even an unfair question of me to ask of what perspective would you have given yourself because we can't have that perspective without those
Right.
experiences too. So I think that's hard to understand too.
If we did it, if I asked you a similar question with softball or any athlete, I'm sure some of your favorite college softball stories or high school don't necessarily even involve the game. It involves everything leading up to the game or the locker rooms or certain things like
Just
that,
the
right?
people, I mean, people
Yeah,
memories, yeah, like just the sport itself,
right.
not,
And that's where I'm coming from with the
yeah,
maintenance side of it.
that's
So
hilarious. Not the pond. Did he make it out okay?
yeah, the buckets were floating, crazy stuff. Anyways,
I feel like
I
that's one of those things that just probably lives rent free in your head. Like it just pops up sometimes in your mind. You're like, yep, that happened.
yeah, at one point I journaled a lot I wrote a lot of those stories down. I'm like, I swear we could make a sitcom out of it,
You
but
gotta
whatever.
find them.
I gotta find, I don't know if they were on an old computer. There, anyways, it was, I mean, one time a guy working maintenance made a cannon and would shoot golf balls out of it to see how far they would go with black powder. Like the older I get, I feel like I make it up, but I don't. I remember
I was gonna
I
say,
just
did
saw
you
my,
dream this or did
no, I
anyone
saw
else
my
win?
friend Todd the other day. He remembers, like we witnessed it, you know.
Oh,
So it's
jeez.
good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, this was awesome. Thank you for sharing. I know, pretty awesome guy, if I don't tell you enough, but
Well,
we're,
I appreciate it.
yeah, you're awesome in a lot of ways. So appreciated you sharing and it's been fun as always.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity, Allie.
Yes. All right. We'll talk to everyone soon. Thank you.
Goodbye.